Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, I was thinking about this R. Kelly situation, the situation with the secret victims, or the secrecy behind the alleged victims, I should say. And on one hand, these people are actually being used as weapons in the case. And in my personal opinion, these people have to be taken off the board. Not literally taken off the board, but the secrecy, the weapon of secrecy has to be taken off the board. And of course, we already know that part of the actual process for the indictment involves some secrecy. There's nothing we can do about that. If you've been following the grand jury proceedings with a lot of things that has been happening lately, you'll know that. And then there's also the fraudulent R. Kelly motion, which I have a video on, which talks about the grand jury secrecy. You already know that as well. So part of this, you just kind of have to accept that secrecy is involved in some of the process. But after that initial indictment, after the grand jury indictment, the veil of secrecy is supposed to be lifted. But yet, we still have the situation where the prosecutors are trying to keep R. Kelly from knowing the names of the victims. And it's obvious, it's 100% obvious that they're using this as a weapon. And the reason we know this is because you can't prepare for a trial when you don't know what's coming at you. So, on one hand, it's kind of like you're dealing with an assassin, almost to speak, because you have this threat out there. You don't know where the threat is coming from. You don't know how to deal with the threat. You don't know how to prepare for the threat because it's a secret. So I mean, maybe that's a bad metaphor, but it's one of the best metaphors I can come up with for right now. But essentially, you have this secret out there, and that secret has to be dealt with. That secret has to be taken off the board. Now, there's a simple strategy that R. Kelly can use to deal with this situation. Very simple. But before we get too far into that, let's talk about first how this situation came to be. So, of course, this situation came to be for several reasons. First, I've already stated it's part of the grand jury indictment process to keep the witnesses and the alleged victims secret. So that's the first part. Second, there's allegations that there was some sexual abuse on children. And while these people are adults now, I think they are kind of playing off of the statute, allow the names of children to be released if they're victims of or alleged victims of sex crimes. So you don't release the names of those children. There's statutes for that. And I think they're playing off of those particular statutes. Now, in addition to that, there's also statutes out there that protects the names of the victims. These statutes would essentially prevent the names from getting out to the general public. But in some cases, especially with children, these statutes basically protect children and they prevent the names of children being handed over to the alleged abuser, right? So they're playing off a mixture of statutes here. And yet another reason why they're able to get away with this is because they are making allegations that he cheated in the 2008 trial. Now, because they've made those allegations, they're able to further keep these secret pieces on the proverbial chessboard and use it against R. Kelly as a weapon, right? So you got just a quick recap. You have the allegations of child sex crimes. You have the allegations, general abuse, sexual abuse on the victims. And then you have the allegation of tampering with the 2008 trial. Now, I'm not saying any of that stuff is true, and I'm simply bringing it out in this video so you can kind of understand why we have this situation. And most people already understand it. I'm just reviewing it just to make it fresh on everyone's mind so that I can, get to the material in this video. So now the question becomes, how do you deal with these secret witnesses? How do you take these secret pieces off the chessboard? And in my opinion, that's a pretty good analogy because to me, it's almost like you're playing a game of chess, except you have invisible pieces on the chessboard that you can't counter. You can't, you can't account for, and you can't see them. You don't know what they're going to do. You don't know how to defend against them, but your opponent can see them, and your opponent knows how to use them. We know these pieces are on the chessboard. From my opinion, this is all nonsense. Because in order for the veil of secrecy to work, the alleged victims themselves would need to exercise some type of restraint. And the alleged victims themselves would need to try to keep some of this information secret. And we can clearly see that's not happening. You have alleged victims going out doing news conferences. You have alleged victims going out doing documentaries. You have alleged victims going out on Twitter, making posts on Twitter about, the allegations. You have alleged victims going out making posts on Instagram. And you have alleged victims going out making YouTube videos. You have alleged victims going out writing books. So it's 100% clear who the victims are. It's 100% clear that there's no secret here. 100%. So with this in mind, the government clearly knows that these people are out there doing these things. And it's clear that the government is simply using the secrecy as a weapon. 100% clear. They're using this secrecy as a weapon to prevent R. Kelly from getting a fair trial, because you can't prepare for a trial when you don't get a chance to engage the alleged victims up until the actual trial. You have to, like, the trial process starts the moment that there's an allegation. So it's clear that there is no secret. So I'm trying to figure out, how this nonsense has basically gone on for so long, because it's clear who the alleged victims are. Everyone knows who the alleged victims are. The alleged victims are coming out on YouTube. The alleged victims are hopping on Twitter. The alleged victims are hopping on Instagram, writing books, doing documentaries. So it's clear who they are. So because it's clear who they are, R. Kelly just simply needs to get rid of the strategy of secrecy that they're going to use in the trial, that they are using in the trial. I'm sorry. So the simple strategy for dealing with these people is this: simply subpoena them. Simply subpoena these people. And once you subpoena them, you can basically involve them in the process so that you can have a fair trial. Again, we all know who these people are. We know who Jane Doe number one is. We know who, at least I know who Jane Doe number one is. At least I think I do. And I think we know who Jane Doe number five are, right? So all you have to do is just go ahead and subpoena them. Once you subpoena them, you're forcing the government's hand, and you're forcing the government to basically defend these people, right? Because R. Kelly simply wants to reveal who the alleged victims are in the case so that he can begin his process of defending himself. And as I stated, if you don't know who the alleged victims are, you can't really defend yourself in this case. So when R. Kelly subpoenas them, he puts the government in a tricky situation because they can't. There's no real defense because now you're unveiling the the witnesses or the alleged victims. You're unveiling them, and you're removing the veil of secrecy. So now that you can essentially question these people in court. And again, let's be real. It's not a secret to who these people are. It's not a secret. Questions and comments below. Let me know who you think the alleged victims are, and let me know if you think that there are possibly some alleged victims who are going to be in this case that no one is expecting to be in this case, right? But the bottom line is everybody and their mama knows who the secret witnesses are. And because R. Kelly has subpoenaed them, the government can't come back and say, hey, you can't subpoena these people because they are secret witnesses in this case. Well, I mean, if you come out and you make that argument, then you yourself have just basically revealed that they are Jane Doe 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. So I mean, that's essentially it. That's essentially it. You subpoena these people, you get them into court, and you can subpoena them on many different grounds. Some of the witnesses that can be subpoenaed on the basis of, hey, this person is on Twitter, they're claiming to be a victim, and they're putting information out there that would taint the jury. I want to subpoena this person and issue a gag order against them in this case. I mean, that's one of the ways that you could potentially unveil them, right? Because you're R. Kelly would be taking an initiative in basically unveiling these people in court instead of waiting for the last minute. There's several different ways you can subpoena them. That's just one thing that I'm actually throwing out there. You can actually subpoena them with the purpose of getting them into the case so that, number one, you can issue a gag order. And then number two, you could probably subpoena them and say, well, hey, these people are going to be material witnesses in a case, and I need to subpoena them so that they can speak as to what's going on with this case. So like I said, there's lots of different ways and lots of different reasons that R. Kelly could subpoena the Jane Does, right? Again, everybody knows who the Jane Does are, and we all know that the government is simply using this secrecy as a weapon so that R. Kelly cannot prepare himself for trial. And if you're not prepared for trial, then you're going to lose your trial. It's just that simple. So that's pretty much it for this video. Leave your questions and comments below. Do you think this is a good strategy? Think R. Kelly should subpoena the alleged victims, get them into court so he can start preparing himself for trial? That's it. Questions and comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe.